But tell us about buying portfolios, because that's super interesting and it's next level for a lot of people.
I think it can be a natural progression. A lot of people think developing and building is a natural progression, but I hate refurbs. I'll do anything I can to not do a refurb.
Yep.
And I got a taster of it when I got kind of introduced to the trading side of properties, we buy, sell, buy. And that doesn't mean buy, spend 6 months renovating it, 3-4 months in the market to then sell it for in out like a traditional flip. But there's traders that will buy properties, do nothing, and sell them.
Yep. And
I got a taster of that. And I went, wow, that's my kind of flip. It's all about the laptops, the relationships, the phones, that kind of a deal. But so there's all these little strategies. There's the buy to lets. There's it's now called a buy, renovate, buy, refurb, rent, refinance. So it used to be called deposit recycling when I started. I don't know, just an all money out buy to let, as you will. And there's all these little fancy strategies all on their own, but when you buy in bulk, you can kind of combine them all.
Yep.
And so I think a lot of people miss the point with portfolios and go, well, the 6 here, but I don't like those 2, but I'll keep those for now. I won't buy it. Well, no, we'll buy the 6, sell the 2 you don't want, keep the 4. But by doing that, what you actually do is you combine a flip with a buy-to-let strategy and you can grow. And ultimately, you could end up walking away with more capital than when you started, plus you've added units to your portfolio.
Yep.
And this trick, it's all about the speed. And if you don't have to do a refurb, you can scale quite fast. But, and this is a big but, you need to be good at your paperwork, your organization. You need to learn almost white collar skills.
Yes. We were chatting about this the last time you were in the office. The focus wasn't on, like, what I would say is the property education fancy strategies and going and do 2-day courses and doing these fancy obscure legal tricks. It was the basics. It was having the right lenders, having the right solicitors, having the right conveyancing, having the right team behind you. And I actually noticing 90% of building a solid business is a boring admin, but people would miss that. All the stuff you spoke about, some of the stuff was stuff I'd never heard anybody speaking of in these 2-day courses, and all this creative stuff and fancy tricks. But essentially, the way to make that work is having the basics and the team behind you.
I mean, the fancy stuff is great, and there's fancy stuff that I suppose that I will do, but the basics buy-to-let works. And people go, oh, well, why would I do a buy-to-let to get £250 cash flow? Blah, blah, blah. Well, no, buy 20 of them in one go. Trade few, some keep some. And the beautiful thing about buy-to-let, there's letting agents all over the country. Finding letting agents is not difficult. There's so many to pick from. You've already got the people you need at your fingertips to kind of run these assets. Solicitors all over the country. Accountants that understand property all over the country. So there's people there for the picking you can use. But with buy-to-let, it's boring, isn't it? But you can kind of do your deal, park it over here, that's it, and just keep adding and adding and adding. But definitely what does happen when you sort of pass that 10-15 mark, you need to start thinking about it more like a business. It needs to be more systemized, more structured. And that's one of the big things that I've kind of found myself falling into when I set up my first mastermind group, was people at that sort of level. How do we get to the next level? Because you have to start thinking about it a bit differently. And okay, there's a little bit more overhead costs you need to put in, but then that allows it to keep running, so you can keep acquiring. So it's just a beautiful, simple strategy that works. There's a massive housing demand, rents are going up, so you have a buy-in at X point. Okay, you're getting 250 cash flow there, but as long as you just wait, your rents go up. Okay, it's all been flipped on its head recently with interest rates rising, but we'll come back to that. But as a core strategy, it works. And as long as you don't get greedy, you just keep building it, not extracting money instantly, like quit your job in how many days or financially free from property. I mean, I don't rely on my rental income because it's all going back in the business. I'm building something, so I've got a low leveraged portfolio that can actually pay a sustainable income rather than just rinsing it everyone I can as soon as possible. I think that's the key. So it's boring, but it works.
I agree with that. Just having had a letting agency since 2006. We would have people coming in, I'm not watching this, I won't mention names, coming in, I'm a property millionaire, I've got 42 properties, I'm going on yachts and cruises, and we were saying, well, you need to reinvest some of that money back into doing your properties up. Maybe not leveraging too high, always remortgaging to the hill and taking that money out, but spending it on nonsense. Spending it in cruises and going, a property portfolio can fund a very nice lifestyle. But as they noticed, and this was after the credit crunch, a change in interest rates in your mortgages that were on a fixed rate coming to an end of a term and then been massively shocked at what the next interest rate is going to be. People went from, well, I'm a millionaire, Scott, I'm going on 6 months cruises, big fancy houses on the coast, to renting a 1-bedroom flat off us on housing benefit in the space of a month, because the mortgages changed, portfolio lending, and then it was like, well, I've got low interest rates where you run cash flow positive of 250 and a little interest rate change, because that portfolio was so highly geared, they've lost everything. So the boring basics work. Can people build? You've got loads of capital, loads of businesses, loads of income, loads of track record, and great reputation with banks, lenders, and people that may give you private money. What about people starting new? Are buying portfolios out of their reach, or is that something they could do with the right network?
I didn't say anything about loads of capital. It's all tied up in assets. But
assets.
But yeah, yes, you can buy property with no money. Well, you can't buy property with no money. You need money, but it doesn't have to be your money. So I think, yes, you can buy property with none of your own money. So the money has to come from somewhere. And the problem is, starting out, you have no track record. Okay, you can join communities, you can get around people, the right people, and kind of leverage them to a degree, but you still need something to start. So the common, again, looking at me, I started off sourcing and management, and source is a very popular strategy. Rent to rent is quite a popular strategy as well. You can get into it with very little money. You build up experience, you build up credibility, you get known, and then that can lead into actually getting a little bit of money to get started. So my first buy to let, I use my own money. But then you kind of have that. So there's nothing wrong with taking a few years to get off the ground. Learn the base, almost like your apprenticeship, so to speak. But at some point when you start buying, okay, you want to buy maybe your first one, you're just a single buy to let, get familiar with the process of conveyancing, the little bits and pieces, do it almost small, learn your craft. But the problem is, if you just keep doing the same thing for 20 years, you're going to grow very, 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 very slow. And it's once you get the fundamentals right, it's knowing when to then propel and not constantly, just keep doing the same thing and go, this is rubbish, this isn't work. No, it does work. It's maybe time to take a bigger step and go on to the next thing.
Should you own properties in your own name or a limited company?
I'm not a chartered accountant,
so I'm not authorised to give financial advice, but,
but
what would you do?
The vast majority of people that I speak to and in our community are buying in limited companies. And it doesn't just come down to taxation. There's other little benefits like inheritance. It's easier for passing wealth through inheritance if it's under a limited company wrapper. It's a lot easier to put expenses through a limited company to make. This is taxation, but it's also a little bit of planning. So in your personal name, you're almost forced to declare the profit, no matter what. In a limited company, you have the option to, do you know what? I'm going to fire some money in my pension to bring that corporate tax bill down. We actually had a really interesting there's a strategy shared by, we've got a SaaS partner, and this is Wealth Network. And he was explaining how there was this they had like a $100,000 corporation tax bill. But what they did was they basically got a bridging loan to buy an asset back from themselves, and then that wiped out the corporation tax, and they ended up paying like no corporation tax, but they moved the asset into their pension. And it was, I honestly, if I had a whiteboard here, I could sit here and draw it out and try it. But you went in and you go, wow, that's amazing. It's like, so this limited companies give you that element of separation from you as an individual. So I think the biggest one, I'd say the biggest one of the bigger ones is control. You've got more control over the income and the expenses. Taxation is the one that the accountants always zone in on. There's inheritance. And it's also cleaner. As a business owner, you might relate to this, and anyone listening, if you're a business owner, you're self-employed. Certainly in Scotland, the norm is to pay your 12,570 through your payroll and the rest in dividends to get you up to 43,662. And you just put that through, whether you need it or not. And obviously, that's what you pay yourself. Now, if you've got properties in your personal name, it's almost taking up space in your tax return, overcomplicating it. You don't know what the expenses are going to be. You don't know what rent's going to come in or not come in. You don't know. There's a lot of unknowns. So you almost have to wait to the end of the year to know what you can actually pay yourself. So it just gives you a whole layer of extra complexity that you do not need. I think where I've typically found accountants in favour of buying in your own name is when you're only buying one or two. But I'm a big believer in if you only want one or two buy-to-lets, just don't do it. Don't even bother. So 99.9% of the time, I'm seeing people buying in limited companies. And I'm saying, if you want any less than 10 buy-to-lets, just don't bother. Not worth it. Not worth it.
Interesting.
So that's not financial advice. I'm not recommending limited companies, but I'm just saying, in my experience, it seems to be where the vast majority of investors are operating. Maybe a little bit of a caveat, because limited companies, your accounting fees are going to be slightly higher. Mortgage rates are going to be slightly higher, and there's slightly less lenders. So that's kind of the caveats. But overall, I think the pros outweigh the cons. That's my opinion anyway.
Definitely. And again, we're not giving financial advice, and don't just take your own independent stuff. But I have seen people with £1 million buy-to-let portfolios that had to sell them because they were in their own name in the event of somebody dying, pay inheritance tax, pay capital gains tax, pay all the mortgages off, and essentially are left with nothing. So you could be sitting with millions of pounds in assets and nothing. So definitely worth considering getting them into limited companies or doing whatever, and you pay tax. But many years ago, nobody really put them into limited companies. That was never heard of. Now everybody was with the tax. So guys, just be very aware. See the people that make the rules, and you hear we're recording this on election day. The results have been announced about the new government, and so very timely for Tories versus Labour, tax versus business, blah blah blah. But what I will say is the people that make the rules, the people that make the legal and the tax rules, make them in such a way that they don't need to pay tax. So you're just following the rules that the people that make the rules implement. But 99% of the people don't understand the way that is. So we're not giving financial advice, but if you do what the experts do, and the people that make these tax rules and these financial rules and legal structures, guys, you can benefit from the same thing as them. But 99% of people don't bother. They just buy it. And getting a buy-to-let in an asset is a massive thing. For some people, getting that second property is amazing and well done to them. But thinking about business structure and tasks, you could wipe out £1 million portfolio on the event of your death. Why is it important to diversify your portfolio? I'm deliberately keeping the focus here on, I'll say, vanilla buy-to-let, traditional buy-to-let residential properties, not venturing into service accommodation or anything fancy, because listen, my business was built on buy-to-lets. Many of our clients are buy-to-let landlords that have a letting agency, so it is a solid investment strategy. You mentioned commercial. Commercial won't touch on service accommodation, but as you build a portfolio, and you said you got 100 units in the last 3 years, so assuming you've got hundreds of units in your portfolio, what other things would you add to that? What other assets? Because you mentioned properties, one asset that you're building. I'm
definitely a boring guy. I love my stocks and shares, Isaac. I used to pick individual stocks. Now I just put it in funds. But the reason I love a stocks and shares, Isaac, but I dislike it because it's very hard to get money into it, because you have to, you create your wealth in your limited companies. You have to extract it and then have it in your personal name to put in your stocks and shares, Isaac. However, that's what I dislike about it. What I like about it, once the money's in and it's invested, all capital gains, all dividend income is free from tax. And obviously, most business owners, as I alluded to earlier in the call, 43,662 is what they'll pay themselves every year, unless they opt to pay higher rate tax. If you want to earn more money, it's very difficult to get out of the company. But if you've got a stocks and shares ISA that's got, I don't know, 500,000, 1 million in it, and it's spitting out, let's say it's worth 1 million and it's got yielding at 4%. What's that? 25 grand, 20 grand? Probably. Something like that. I think 5% is 25 grand. So that's 25 grand per annum with zero tax on it on top of your existing salary. So I'm looking at it going, I need to be funneling cash into that to build that up, because that's going to top up an income and there'll be no tax on it.
Yep.
Plus, and this is something that it was like a penny drop moment for me when my IFA said you should be looking at your stocks and shares as a bank account, it's a savings account. So if you need money very, very quickly, you can liquidate stocks very, very quickly. Excluding bank holidays, Monday to Friday, is it 8 till 4? The London Stock Exchange is open. You can liquidate anything, and within 2-3 working days, cash is in your bank. So if you've built up a stocks and shares ISA, not only can it be producing income and creating that, it's almost like a pension pot, I guess, but you can access it now, which is quite good because you can't do that with property. So big fan of stocks and shares ISAs in particular. Pensions as well, they're very tax efficient. So you've got all this wealth you've created in your limited companies. What you do with it, fire it in your pension, pay less corp tax. Obviously, pensions, you can't access it now, but they've got loads of benefits. You can utilize SIPs and SASs. You can buy commercial property in them. You can loan back money to your business. So they're probably two of the key ones, pensions and stocks. Nice and boring, simple, fundamental basics. I've got a little bit of cash in whiskey. I've got a client that deals in whiskey and has an online shop. So that was more, I suppose I took a little bit of his advice. I just want to diversify, put some cash into that. I've an interest in cars, but it's one of these ones where it's the sort of assets you need a lot of capital and you're parking it and they don't cash flow, but you can make money on them. So they're probably some of the key ones. But again, it comes back to the thing, buy to let, buying in bulk. You can make equity almost at thin air relatively quickly. Once you've made the equity, you can kind of, we've alluded to about 100 odd units, but actually don't plan on keeping them all forever. At some point, when the opportunity arises, you liquidate them, you take the equity and you can put it into a different asset class. And my final point on this, one of my favorite quotes I heard before was, everything in my property portfolio is for sale. Literally everything I own is for sale at a price. Now, we've got units in Aberdeen that, let's take, I don't know, flat on Union Grove. Unless I get 120 grand for it, I'm not selling it. I'm not going to get 120 grand for it right now. It's just not happening. But as soon as someone comes along and offers me 120 grand, I'll sell it. I just sold a house in Bowness a couple of months ago, and it was one of the ones, I'm never selling it. Great asset. Tenant served notice, moved out, bought a house. My mortgage was expiring. I was looking at it going, well, let's just stick on the market. Got a good offer, sold. If I didn't get the offer I wanted, I would have just put a tenant in again. I mean, no skin off my back. So literally anything I own's for sale. Everything's for sale, but just at a price. And I think with that mindset, you need to take the emotion out of it. Take the emotion out of it. It's just each one of them properties is just a bank of equity. And at some point, you probably want to extract it and diversify. And let's be honest, right? At the end of the day, are we building up wealth just to drop dead and do nothing? No, we're building up wealth so we can enjoy our lives and later in life be able to scale back a little bit and actually retire.
If you're buying a portfolio of 10 units, would you be looking for a discount because you're buying it in one transaction, or are owners essentially looking at a premium because it's a ready built portfolio?
100% buying at a discount. I think what we got to bear in mind as well as a seller, if you're selling a portfolio, they're probably all going to be tenanted. And selling tenanted properties is huge benefits to the owner. They keep the cash flow. They avoid a whole ton of expense. So I very often, the way I like to look at it is, say you've got a property worth £100,000. If you sell it vacant for £100,000, that's the equivalent of selling it tenanted for 95 grand in terms of what the seller will actually receive after all the fees, costs, and whatever. And that's a massive approximation, but generally off the bat, with like a property around about that sort of value, you're talking a 5 grand difference. So you sell it vacant for 100 or tenanted for 95. The seller gets exactly the same at the end of the day, but for a buyer buying it at 90, they're already a peg ahead in terms of where the peg's in the ground for negotiating. And then obviously if you make the portfolio bigger, it's a lot harder to actually find a buyer for that. So we did a portfolio last year that's 39 units. It was a value of 4 million. Well, it's 20 grand off 4 million. We paid 2,885,000 for it. It was a 27.5% discount. Now that we had to negotiate a little bit further down. But what you've got to bear in mind is who was the seller.
Yeah.
Now, the seller was in his 80s. His kids had no interest in taking on the portfolio. He'd bought a lot of them really cheaply, like in the 90s. If he was to sell them one by one, not only would it take forever, and he'd probably die before, or not maybe not die, but be in ill health to actually enjoy the money before he even got them all through. One a year. It'd be a massive nightmare in terms of the admin, the selling them all one by one, all the rest of it. And then the fees would end up being more because you'd be a solicitor one at a time, mortgage redemption one at a time, rather than just one big swoop. So actually,
he's value in other ways that isn't money.
I was at like 3.5 originally. He came down, and we did the deal. And the funny thing was, he thanked us afterwards. I mean, thanks, it's a massive weight off my mind. And he still walked away with a lump of cash to enjoy in the sort of twilight years of his life. So you'll find a lot of, when you're dealing with portfolios, although it's obviously businessmen, or sometimes it's people that have always accidentally built it up and it's just a problem. You very often find getting the discounts a lot easier than you think.
Guys, thank you for watching this content. It means a lot, not just for Pillow Partners, a business, but our associated charity, Pillow Safe Havens. Every like, every comment, every share really, really matters. Subscribe to Pillow, follow us, but also to Pillow Safe Havens and all our other websites. It really, really will make a difference in the communities where we manage properties.